After my husband finally cut ties with his toxic family, they demanded we sacrifice our home for his jobless sister and her family, but that was the breaking point. It's a story I never thought I'd share, one that took me years to understand, let alone confront. Imagine building a life with someone, only to have their family slowly unravel the bond you've worked so hard to create. My husband Jacob was the golden child in his family, a role that came with privileges, but also an insidious price. The love and attention he received from his mother and sister came with strings attached, strings that would soon strangle the happiness I thought we had. When they demanded we give up our home to accommodate my jobless sister-in-law and her growing family, it was the breaking point. What began as a whisper of discomfort in my marriage grew into a storm that would test everything I believed about loyalty, love, and the boundaries we should never cross. The unraveling was inevitable, but it didn't come without cost. Jacob had always been my rock, the person I trusted above all else. But the more I witnessed his family's toxic behavior, the more I felt like I was losing him to them. It started with the subtle comments and actions, the little things that Jacob would brush off as family dynamics. But I wasn't blind. His mother, with her endless need for control, and Sarah, his sister, with her constant manipulation, had slowly started weaving their way into our lives in ways that made me question whether we had a future at all. It wasn't just the uninvited visits, or Sarah barging into our room, crossing every line of decency. Those were just the visible cracks. It was the way Jacob's loyalty to his family, especially his mother, had overshadowed our marriage. He had always been the golden child, the one she could do no wrong in her eyes. And as much as I tried to be patient, to understand the complexities of their relationship, it began to eat at me. Every time she made a cutting remark about me, every time Sarah took another jab at my character, I felt my heart breaking, piece by piece. But the final straw came when they asked us to give up our house for Sarah's family. That was the moment I realized that I was not just a wife in this marriage. I was a silent observer, an afterthought in their eyes. How could they ask us to sacrifice our home, our lives, for someone who refused to take responsibility for herself? How had it come to this? As I stared at Jacob, trying to find the man I had married, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him, not just to his family, but to a life that no longer had room for us. The storm I had feared was finally here, and no matter how hard I fought, I wasn't sure we could survive it. The tension in our home was unbearable. Each day, it felt like Jacob was slipping further away, caught between the woman who raised him and the wife he had promised to love and protect. The cracks in our relationship were no longer subtle, and every interaction with his family felt like an emotional battlefield. I watched as he continued to try and please his mother and sister, even when their demands crossed every boundary. He would apologize for things that weren't his fault, defend them when they were cruel, and dismiss my feelings as if they were unimportant. One night, as we sat down for dinner, Jacob casually mentioned that his mother had asked us again to consider letting Sarah's family move in. The words felt like a slap across my face, the weight of them sinking deep into my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he entertain this again? How could he continue to let them manipulate us both? My hands trembled as I set down my fork, my heart racing in my chest. I had already given so much patience, so much compromise. But now it was clear that he was choosing them, choosing the family that had never once respected me or my needs. "Jacob, this has gone too far," I said, my voice low, yet shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "How much longer are you going to let them control us? This is our life, not theirs." He looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt, but there was something else to resignation. It was as if the battle had already been lost in his mind, and the family's demands were an inevitability. That's when it hit me, the man I had fallen in love with, the one who promised to stand by me no matter what, had been swallowed whole by his family's toxic grip. For the first time, I wondered if our marriage could survive this. Would he finally choose me, or would he let them tear us apart? The storm was no longer a distant threat. It was right at our door, and I feared it might be too late to escape. I could feel the walls closing in on me as Jacob's silence filled the room. His hesitation, his inability to take a stand, was suffocating. It was no longer just about Sarah and her constant invasions of our privacy, or his mother's manipulative demands. It was about a deeper, more troubling realization. I was losing him. He was being consumed by the very family that was supposed to support us, and I was left standing on the sidelines, watching our marriage crumble under the weight of their expectations. That night, as we sat across from each other, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. The pain, the frustration, the years of swallowing my feelings, all of it exploded in a rush of raw emotion. I couldn't believe that after everything, Jacob still couldn't see what was happening. The love we had built together was now crumbling, piece by piece, because of the very people he refused to confront. "Jacob," I said, my voice shaking, "you need to make a choice. This family dynamic is destroying us. I can't keep fighting this battle alone. I need to know that you're with me, that you'll stand up to them for once." He looked at me, his eyes full of conflict, but I could see the exhaustion in them. It was as if the weight of his family's expectations had worn him down, and I was no longer the one he turned to for support. My heart sank as I watched him turn away, unsure of how to respond. I didn't know how much longer I could endure this feeling of betrayal. His indecision was eating me alive. My love for him was still there, but I was beginning to wonder if it was enough. How many more times could I be expected to swallow the hurt, the insults, the blatant disregard for our life together? With every passing day, I felt more alone, and I couldn't shake the fear that if he didn't make a choice soon, I would lose him not to his family, but to a life where I no longer had a place. The storm was no longer just in our home, it was inside me, threatening to tear everything apart, and as much as I wanted to believe in our love, I feared it might not be enough to save us. The days that followed felt like a slow descent into chaos. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were teetering on the edge of something irreversible. Jacob had always been my protector, my partner. But with each passing moment, his silence grew louder, and the distance between us became more unbearable. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about his complete lack of action, his unwillingness to confront the toxic forces that had infiltrated our lives. My heart ached every time I looked at him and saw the man I loved slowly fading into someone I no longer recognized. I had been patient. I had tried to understand, tried to be the supportive wife, but this was too much. This time, it wasn't just about disagreeing over trivial matters. This was about the very core of our relationship, the trust and respect that had once bound us. He was allowing his family's toxicity to suffocate us, and I was suffocating right along with it. Then, the breaking point came. Mother's demands were no longer just irritating. They were an invasion of everything we had worked for. I could feel my blood boiling as I listened to Jacob casually explain her request. She said it would just be temporary, that we could help Sarah and her kids while they get back on their feet. It was as though I hadn't even been a part of the conversation. It wasn't just the idea that his family thought they could waltz into our home without permission. It was Jacob's complacency, his failure to see how this would tear us apart. I couldn't do it anymore. "Jacob," I said, my voice tight with frustration, "I will not allow this. This house is our home. I will not give it up to them just because they can't manage their own lives." For the first time, I saw something shift in his eyes, a flicker of realization. The silence was broken, but it wasn't enough. He knew I was right, but the question still hung in the air. Would he finally choose me? Or would he let them tear us apart? I couldn't wait any longer. This wasn't just about them anymore. This was about our future, and I had to fight for it, even if Jacob couldn't see it yet. The storm wasn't coming, it was already here, and it was up to us to face it. As the days stretched on, the tension in our home felt like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. Jacob and I had always been a team, but it was as if I was fighting this battle alone now. Every conversation with him seemed to circle back to his family's demands, to Sarah and her constant manipulations, to his mother's insidious attempts to control our lives. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the weight of their expectations suffocating us both. but especially me. And with every passing day, Jacob's reluctance to fully confront them left me feeling more abandoned. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I had always tried to protect him from the worst of his family's behavior, trying to give him space to process and make his own decisions. But this time, the stakes were too high. This wasn't just about a disagreement over a door lock or Sarah's rude behavior anymore. This was about our life together, the foundation we had built. I couldn't let it crumble because of his inability to say no to his family. It all came to a head one evening when Jacob mentioned, almost offhandedly, that his mother had suggested they would just temporarily move in with us until things got better for Sarah. I felt my chest tighten as the words hit me like a physical blow. Not again. We had talked about this before, how we needed space, how we needed to create boundaries to protect our marriage. And yet, here he was, casually entertaining the idea. "Jacob," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained anger, "you cannot be serious. This is our home, our space. We agreed on this, remember? We need this, and yet your family thinks they can just waltz in like it's their right." He looked at me, eyes wide, like he hadn't fully realized the magnitude of what he was saying until that moment. He started, but I cut him off, my frustration overflowing. No more. We've been letting this go on for too long. I won't stand by and watch you let them ruin us. You need to make a choice, Jacob. It's either me or it's them. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep fighting for us when you're still bending to their every whim. His silence said everything. For a moment, he didn't respond. It was as if he was finally realizing the full extent of his family's toxicity and the toll it had taken on our marriage. But even then, I couldn't tell if he was going to choose us or them. The storm I had feared was finally here, and I was ready to face it, even if Jacob wasn't. I wasn't sure if we could make it out unscathed, but I was done being the silent partner. This time, I was standing my ground. The silence that followed that night was unbearable. Jacob's failure to make a decision weighed on me like a heavy fog, and every moment I spent waiting for him to stand up to his family felt like an eternity. My heart ached as I watched him, torn between the woman who had birthed him and the wife he had vowed to cherish. The more he hesitated, the more my patience drained away. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, stuck between his family's demands and my desperate need for him to choose me, to choose us. It was on a stormy Saturday afternoon that everything finally came to a head. Jacob walked into the living room, his face pale and drawn. He looked like a man who had just faced something far darker than he had anticipated. As he sat down beside me, I could see the guilt in his eyes, guilt that had been building for weeks, if not months. "I spoke to my mom," he said quietly, his voice betraying the conflict inside him. "She's not letting this go. She's furious that we didn't agree to let Sarah and her family move in." His eyes met mine, but the words that came next shattered me. "She's making it clear that if I don't fix this, it could tear the family apart. She's even said she'll never speak to me again." The words hit like a slap to the face. His family's hold over him was suffocating, and I could feel the final strands of trust between us starting to unravel. "Jacob," I whispered, my voice breaking, "this isn't about them anymore. This is about us. You've let them manipulate you for too long. I can't keep being second place in your life." His face twisted with confusion and pain. "I don't know what to do," he muttered, the defeat in his voice like a knife to my heart. I stood up, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and fury. "Then maybe you need to decide," I said, the words coming out in a rush. "Because I can't wait any longer. If you don't cut ties with them now, I'm done." As I walked away, the weight of what I had just said hit me. The storm had arrived, and no matter what happened next, there was no going back. Jacob had to choose, and for the first time, I wasn't sure which way he would go. The following days felt like an agonizing waiting game. Jacob was distant, his guilt hanging in the air between us like a thick fog. He had promised to speak with his family, to set boundaries, but every time he opened his mouth, it felt like he was telling me what I wanted to hear, not what needed to be done. It was as if he was still caught in the web of their expectations, unsure whether he could sever the ties that had defined his life for so long. The silence between us grew louder, and I could feel myself slipping further away from him. Then, everything erupted the night before our wedding. We had spent months planning every detail, fighting so hard for this moment only to have it threatened by the very people who should have been celebrating with us. Sarah showed up uninvited, making a scene as usual. She demanded that Jacob give her more attention, as if the wedding wasn't ours, but hers. I watched from the sidelines as Jacob tried to calm her down, his face a mix of frustration and guilt. It was the final straw. I couldn't bear it anymore. "Jacob, this is our day. This isn't about your family. Why can't you see that?" I shouted, my voice breaking as the words spilled out. He looked at me, his face pale, his hands trembling. "I don't know what to do," he whispered, the weight of the situation crushing him. My heart shattered. "You've already chosen, haven't you?" I said, the bitter truth finally sinking in. "You've chosen them over me." He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The silence stretched on, heavier than ever. In that moment, I knew what had to be done. The storm had torn us apart, and no matter how much I wanted to believe in us, I couldn't fight this battle alone anymore. I turned and walked away, knowing that I couldn't keep waiting for him to choose me. The morning after the confrontation was unlike any I'd experienced. The wedding day, the day we had dreamt of, was now clouded by the shadows of doubt and betrayal. Jacob's indecision had reached its breaking point, and I could feel the weight of it crushing our future. He hadn't made a firm choice yet, and the uncertainty of his silence cut through me like a knife. I had always believed in us, in our love, but today, I wasn't sure if I even knew him anymore. The phone rang, and my heart sank when I saw it was his mother calling. I refused to pick up. After everything, I couldn't let her continue to manipulate him. I couldn't let them continue to poison what little was left of our bond. Jacob had promised me that he would set boundaries, that he would make the right choice. But now, as I sat there, waiting for him to come to terms with what he had to do, it felt like he was already lost to them. When he finally came to me, his face pale and strained, my pulse quickened. I braced myself for what was coming, knowing in my gut that the decision had already been made. "I talked to her," he said softly, his voice breaking with guilt. "She's furious. She's made it clear. If I don't let them move in, everything's over." My breath caught in my throat, the words I had been dreading finally landing. Everything's over. The one thing I had hoped to avoid had now become my reality. I wasn't just losing Jacob, I was losing everything we had fought for, everything I thought we had built together. "Jacob," I whispered, my voice trembling, "this isn't just about a house. This is about us. You can't keep choosing them over me." His eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw the man I loved, the man I had married, but the moment was fleeting. With a heavy heart, I knew what I had to do. I had already fought my last fight. I stood up, my legs shaky but resolute. "If you can't make a choice, Jacob, then I will, and I won't wait any longer." The storm had arrived, and it was time for me to take control of my own life. The days that followed felt like a blur, the weight of Jacob's indecision still heavy in the air. I had been patient, I had been understanding, but now it felt like I was just clinging to the remnants of something that no longer existed. The woman I had been in love with, the man who had promised me a life together, had both faded into the shadows of what his family demanded. I couldn't keep waiting for a decision that might never come. The storm I had feared had swept through our lives, and it had torn us apart piece by piece. It was the night before the wedding when I finally reached my breaking point. I had been holding it together for so long, keeping the peace, trying to protect what little was left of our love. But as I sat across from Jacob, his eyes filled with guilt, my heart shattered. "I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't keep fighting for a relationship when you're still letting them control everything." Jacob's face contorted with anguish, his hands shaking as he reached for mine. "I don't know what to do," he whispered, his voice full of desperation. "I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to lose them either." The words felt like a punch in the gut. He still couldn't choose. In that moment, I knew it wasn't just about the house or his family. It was about him, the man I had spent years building a life with, failing to choose me. I stood up, my heart racing. "Then you've already made your choice, Jacob. I won't wait for you to lose everything. I've already lost enough." I turned away, not looking back. The decision had been made, and as much as it hurt, I couldn't stay in a relationship where I was no longer the priority. The storm had come, and it was time for me to face it alone. The next few hours felt like a twisted nightmare. Jacob's words echoed in my mind as I paced around the room, each step heavier than the last. He hadn't made a choice. He couldn't make a choice. His family's demands, their hold on him, had drained the man I had married, and I was left standing in the wreckage of everything I thought we had. The wedding, once a symbol of our commitment, now felt like an impossible dream-own that had been shattered by a force neither of us could control. I could feel the weight of my own decision settling in. It wasn't just about Jacob anymore. It was about my dignity, my right to be treated as more than an afterthought. I had spent so many years trying to please his family, trying to be patient, to be the supportive wife. But it was clear now no matter how hard I tried, I would always be second to them. I wasn't going to wait around for him to decide between me and them. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed the number I had been avoiding for so long. Jacob's mother. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer. When she answered, I didn't wait for pleasantries. "You've crossed the line," I said, my voice steady but cold. "This is our life, and you have no right to tell us how to live it." Her voice was filled with feigned concern, the same manipulative tone that had broken Jacob down for years. "You're being unreasonable," she said. "This is about family." "No," I shot back, my anger rising. "This is about us, and you have no place in it anymore." As I ended the call, I knew that was it. The line had been drawn. Jacob had to make a decision, and I wasn't going to wait for him to choose them. I was done being controlled by a family that didn't respect me, that didn't see me as an equal partner in this marriage. The storm had torn through everything, and now all I had left was the wreckage and the painful realization that no matter what happened next, I had to move forward alone. The question was, could Jacob still find his way back to us, or had the storm already destroyed everything? I stood there, staring at the phone screen, the weight of the decision sinking in deeper with each passing second. The call with Jacob's mother had been a turning point. I had finally drawn the line, but as I watched the phone screen fade to black, I realized it was no longer just about standing up to his family, it was about standing up for myself. Jacob's silence was deafening. He hadn't called. He hadn't tried to fix what was broken. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't waiting for him anymore. The man I married was slipping away, tangled in the toxic web of his family's expectations. And I was suffocating in it. I had given everything, my patience, my love, my understanding. But it was clear now, no amount of compromise would ever be enough. My self-respect, my future, had to come first. I packed my things, the sound of my own heartbeat louder than the whispers in my mind. As I left, part of me wanted to look back, to hope that Jacob would come running, that he'd finally see what was at stake. But I knew better. The storm had taken everything. And as much as it hurt, I couldn't stay in a life that wasn't truly mine anymore. I had to walk away. And I did.